everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, the second webinar of the Include series, The Power of Pivot. I'm Ebony Weber, and I serve as your MANRRS CEO. I'm delighted to bring you welcome remarks today, and as I reflected back on this topic, one of the things that came to mind was my whole life I was an athlete. I played basketball. And one of the first moves that you're ever taught in basketball is the pivot. And I started to reflect back on why that move was so fundamental in basketball. And as I just kind of read up on some things and began to, think back and reflect on my own experiences, I think life and going through and playing basketball has a lot of correlation. Definitely the pivot allows for you to, in basketball, create space. So you can decide if you're going to pass or shoot. And in life, it's the same way. That pivot allows you to decide if you're going to take advantage of an opportunity, or more importantly, who can you pass the ball to? I think also in the power of the pivot is it allows you to change directions. It's so important in life to be able to change direction and to make adjustments where needed and where necessary. And I think lastly, the power of pivot, it helps to prevent you from making mistakes and going down paths that may otherwise not serve you. And so being able to create opportunities for yourselves and prevent mishaps, the pivot is so important. And I'm delighted to be joined by the panelists today, knowing their stories and their backgrounds. I know it's going to be so amazing to hear their stories and to hear how pivot has allowed them and shaped their careers. And so with that, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our panelists and our hosts. And I'll now pass it over to our moderator, Miss Erica Jane Flores.
Good afternoon for many of you, but I'm going to say good morning, top of the morning from the Central Coast of California. And man, the fact that I'm back home represents one of my biggest pivots in life. And in fact, thank you, Ebony, for sharing not just your lesson of the pivot, but I want to take a moment and start with gratitude, because Ebony has embodied the example when I've needed it most in my personal and professional life. We started together back, when I was 25, and I packed up my truck, moved across the country, and started working at National FFA. And she and I worked professionally as partners and developing at partnership a decade. And I took my career back to California, to Northern California. And all of a sudden, unexpectedly, because I thought that I couldn't have kids, but I found out that I was going to have a baby girl 7 years ago. And I have to tell you that that reframed my whole life perspective, my personal path, what I thought was possible for me, and my career. And Ebony, the next day, she sent a dozen of roses to my front door and said, "Welcome to motherhood." And I just want to share that personally for a moment, that instant, that there's not just power and pivot, but the power of relationships and people sharing their own stories and their examples. And today, I'm going to be joined by an incredible group of panelists, and I'm going to challenge them to really go there in sharing their stories. No matter where you're at, sitting, not just around the country, but in your life, you're thinking about changing your major, you're rethinking your career, you're just unsure if you're where you're at. Today, for the next hour, we're gonna be unpacking what that might mean for you and hearing from an incredible group of panelists. As you do, sometimes we think about setbacks as no's, and I want you to challenge to think about how a pivot can be all the ways that you say yes for your life. So I'm going to invite the panelists on screen, and we're just going to start with a quick 45-minute brief introduction so that we really can dive into the conversation to hear more of their stories. But give us a little teaser, and we'll start with you, Cynthia.
Hello, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here with you today. I am Cynthia Stokely. I'm a business transformation coach with Bayer. Been on the board with MANRRS for a number of years. Absolutely love the organization, and count it a pleasure to be here to share with you on today.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. Derek.
Good afternoon from DC, everyone. My name is Derek Mulhern. I am a people and organizational strategist and coach. I run my own consulting and coaching firm, and I'm also blessed to be able to serve as the executive director of the Cultivating Change Foundation. My career has been full of pivots. I can think back to high school, into college, and as I transitioned into the workforce and then started my own business, how there's just been many moments where I've had to dig deep to think differently about where my career, my life is going. And I think one of the beautiful things that I'm really excited to share as we dive deeper in here is how, as much of is my career, it's my life, and it all weaves into the personal aspects as well to be able to bring it into the experience that I've created today.
Thank you, Derek. Courtney.
Thank you so much, Erica. And I echo the gratitude that you shared earlier to you. So thanks for moderating today. With that, again, my name is Courtney White. I'm a senior executive currently serving as the head of human resources for BASF North America. So what do I do in my job? I really work on enterprise-wide transformation. It's about modernizing talent ecosystems, integrating complex acquisitions, and embedding analytics into the core of how we make decisions. But just know this, beyond the org charts and strategy decks, my real work is honestly looking at how we can turn human potential into performance and how we make culture a competitive advantage. My goal is not to just manage change, but to shape it. Thanks for allowing me to be here.
All right. Thank you. And I'm Erica Jane Flores. I'm the CEO of a local nonprofit, Santa Ynez Valley People Helping People. And, I started with sharing that I bet unexpectedly became a mom, but I said yes to that journey. And I returned home to the place that I swore I never would return to, Santa Ynez, where I'm a fourth generation born and raised on my mom's side. And I realized becoming a mom, I wanted to raise her back in that family environment. But my career had that setback, and it was hard to get my feet underneath me. And in fact, Santa Ynez Valley People Helping People is a human service agency where we help distribute food, prevent homelessness, provide youth mental health services at local schools, do alcohol drug prevention to youth. And it also is a place where you can access mainstream benefits like CalFresh, or what is food stamps in California. The first time I walked through the doors of our nonprofit was first as a client seeking assistance 6 years ago. And today I'm the CEO. So let that serve as an example of how you can transform, not take a hand out, but a hand up. And I hope that the advice that's shared today really speaks to the ways that we can have a hand up in our life. Kicking it off, Cynthia, let's start with the basics. How would you define a pivot in your life or your career? And when did you first realize it? Was it this gradual realization, or was it a defining moment?
Yeah, thanks, Erica. So I define a pivot as, I would say, a necessary adjustment or modification, right? That someone needs to make in order to adapt or to improve or to change. And pivots are necessary in each of our lives, right? Especially when our expectation is that we want greater for ourselves. Career-wise, I had no problem pivoting, right? Professionally, I knew what I wanted. So I would change a role when I felt like, okay, I kind of reached that level where I feel like there's more needed. I need more. And I would just go out and find something else, honestly, because I knew what I needed for myself professionally. call it a state of validation for myself. Professionally, I needed to feel validated in what I needed. So I would say that that was gradual. But about 21 months ago, I had a defining moment that pivoted my life substantially due to a personal loss of my husband of 36 years. And going through that healing journey and trying to find who Cynthia was, I realized I had absolutely no idea. I knew Cynthia the professional. I knew Cynthia the mother. I knew Cynthia the daughter. I knew Cynthia the friend. I knew Cynthia the VP. I knew all those things about Cynthia, but to my core, I had absolutely no idea who Cynthia Lynette Lassiter Stokely was. And that is when I realized there is a substantial adjustment and modification that I needed to make within myself in order to find who I was. So for me, it was gradual and defining. And I believe that, we go through so many pivots in our lives, but when we reach that level, that is a defining moment that changes who you are to your absolute core, it catapults you to a place in your life that you never expected that you would be.
Thank you for sharing. I'm so curious. What do you know today that you wish you would have known that moment 21 months ago?
That I can live my life unapologetically. And I will be me regardless of what anyone else thinks or feels. We spend so much time living our lives for other people. And I am living for me.
Those of you, wherever you are at home, put that in your notes on your phone or write it down, living unapologetically. Thank you. Courtney, how do you know when it's time to pivot versus, man, pushing through?
Listen, I have to say this is a question that keeps people stuck, I believe. And that's because so many of us are taught to grind, to endure, or just tough it out. But I've come to learn that the truth is not every hard thing is your assignment. And so, maybe two moments that made it real for me. The first was a push through moment. So early in my career, I was often the youngest in the room, the only person of color, and maybe even the only one asking the hard questions. It wasn't just about contributing. As a matter of fact, I was probably given a keynote speech, like keynote speaker energy in every meeting just to be taken seriously. It was exhausting, but I have to say it was worth it because it was in that season that my voice was really built, my confidence increased, and I think I really developed my leadership edge. But not all moments are like that. And so maybe this next moment is about, a time where the pivot felt right. And that was years later. I was in a role that I have to admit looked really great on my resume and maybe even looked great on LinkedIn, but it honestly left me drained. I felt like I was managing tasks, I wasn't leading transformation. I realized that honestly, I was probably staying out of loyalty to a version of myself that I had outgrown. And that wasn't a season to push through. Honestly, it was a season to release. And so it left me with thinking about, how to know the difference, and then also, practical moves that I can always make. Thanks.
So Courtney, what were things that you could describe that you were noticing in that moment of like, now I gotta pivot? Was it you mentioned, I heard you say I felt drained.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of those things that people can think about, like, okay, I need to notice about myself in this moment to know, am I pushing through or am I pivoting?
So maybe a few things that worked for me to know the difference. The first was asking myself, Is this something that's stretching me or suffocating me? Am I staying because I believe in the mission or because I'm afraid of the unknown? And then the third question that I would ask myself is this discomfort a sign of growth, or is it really a signal of misalignment? And it could be hard to figure out sometimes, which one still. And so there are some practical things that I did, and I think others could do too. The first was a start with a weekly alignment check. So, like every Friday, I would jot down the things during that week that gave me energy, the things that drained me, and the things that I avoided, either intentionally or through reflection. I had to realize that I needed, to do something different. And the reality of doing that is patterns don't lie. They whisper before they shout. So you need to understand what's going on, because at the end of the day, pushing through builds character, but pivoting protects purpose. The wisdom is knowing which one of those moments is required given where you are.
Courtney, I couldn't write fast enough for all those. I feel like we just got a little taste of what the young Courtney keynote developing his voice, right? I heard taking a checklist and identifying on Friday what gave me energy this week, what drained me this week, what was I avoiding. I heard patterns don't lie.
That's
I hear
right.
they whisper before they shout. Man, I couldn't write fast enough, but thank you.
Yeah, you got it. No, you captured it well. I mean, sometimes we think it's got to be big things that we do in order to make a pivot. But honestly, you heard me say it earlier. I think everything starts with the data, and sometimes that data is on self. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Derek, Courtney got us started in trying to, identify ways that we can notice. I know that in your own life, you've practiced the pivot, but you're also working alongside executives, nonprofit organizations, and coaching. So dive a little bit deeper. What internal or external signs can assist with someone recognizing, okay, this pivot is necessary?
Yeah, thanks, Erica. And Courtney and Cynthia are already summing up a lot of it really well. A lot of good book quotes and keynote phrases, as you mentioned, Erica. Um, I think when I really think about pivot, both from my own experience and from working with a number of people at this point who have been working in their own pivots, I think that one of the signs that I would first look for or recognize for myself is when we feel some sensation of being stuck, an uncertainty of what's next, and not really knowing what's next. The other way I would define this is for people that are really searching day in and day out for the answer. What is it? Like what's wrong? What's off? If I try this or I try that, will it make a difference? I think when we start to see those things within ourselves, I think it's an opportunity for us to step back, assess, and really ask ourselves, what is it that we want? Because this isn't about getting it right. I'll give you the shocker, everyone. There's not a right answer. The right answer is the one that you made today, and that's where you're prepared to be, and that's where you can go. And that may continually evolve. And so, when I think of pivots, it's a lot of intuition, it's a lot of gut checks. When I think to the point when I leapt off from being what I like to call a W-2 employee, when I was getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, to starting my own business. I finally just made the call, not because I knew how I was going to do it or that I knew it was going to be the right answer, but I knew it was time for something different, so much to my core that every day I was going into work felt like some type of a struggle, some type of a battle against myself, not against anyone else. And so just really being able to be with those really conflicting feelings and allowing myself to take some risks got me to a place where I could explore more. Does it mean that it's the right answer? I don't know. It's right for right now, and that's what really matters for me.
Derek, I appreciate there's some permission in that, right? When you say that there's guess what, there's not a right answer, or the right answer is the one that you made today. But take a moment and I want you to reflect back. And is there a time, not is there, I know there is, when was the time that you're like, man, if I would have pivoted sooner?
Yeah, there's a few of them, but I think the one that really comes to mind for me is when I think about. So I did a thing where I grew up in the agriculture sector. My background is that I came out as gay at age of 18. Being in the ag sector and being queer was a challenge for me, and so I stayed within the sector for a while, and eventually I took a leap outside of it. And when I took that leap outside of it, I just kind of, I guess the best way for me to put it is noodled in a lot of different things and got a lot of different experience, which was great for me. But I had this like urging desire to be back with food and agriculture, but also had this big fear. And so I stayed away from it for quite some time. I don't know that it was wrong. I gained a ton of experience and learned a lot outside of the sector, but it was the recognition of taking different parts of my identity and finding how they could live together to really create what I was looking for. And so I think that, there were a lot of signs of I wasn't excelling in my career the way I wanted to. I remember I had work from home Fridays back in like 2017, which seems like a crazy thing then. And it was like a day to do laundry and do a bunch of other things. I was like, I guess I'll do some work over here. So there were just the signs for me that I clearly wasn't happy, and there were things that I wanted more aligned. But I didn't really want to take the leap because I had a lot of fear of what it would be like to get back into the sector. And once I finally did it, it was opening arms and welcome, but it was not because of that. It was because of the work that I'd done for myself and who I saw myself as, to just have a lot of confidence in the space that I was in.
Hmm. I really appreciate. There's this common thread that Cynthia, Derek, Courtney, you have all mentioned about. Today we're talking about the power of the pivot, but man, there's this correlation to the power of knowing yourself, right? And centering in that, and how that can really be your compass or your North Star to point you in the directions, and listen to who you really are and honoring that. You also have all mentioned about how you also are intentional about creating space for you to exist unapologetically as you are in the pursuit of your passions. And I want to nod, I'm going to add to my gratitude here about MANRRS. I mentioned that I, changed my life and career, moved across country to National FFA, and I'm so grateful for the platform and experiences of National FFA. When I first walked through the door of a National MANRRS conference, man, I felt like I went home, in a home that I didn't even know existed, where I could show up with all of my dynamic, uh, passionate, and identities, and really flourished in a whole new way and a whole new space because of the people, the mission, the purpose. And I just want to really recognize, Derek, you mentioning how powerful it can be when you're in a place where you feel like you're not honoring who you are, or you're hiding, and how powerful the MANRRS community and opportunities can be. Like, we can show up and make space for ourselves and those around us with great intention. So thank you for sharing that. I know that there's a lot of students at various parts of their education. If you could wind back to your lives, we had a question submitted that said, can you speak to an academic shift? So maybe you thought, I'm going to study this, or I'm going to college for this, and you made a, like, you're not doing that, or maybe speak for a moment to our college students. And I'll throw that softball out to whoever wants to take a hit.
Um, I'll start there. It's interesting because going to college, but even before college, in high school, I loved math, and I was going to be a CPA, and I was going to have Lassiter accounting firm. Absolutely loved math. Um, Started my first semester in accounting 101 and said, absolutely not. This is so not for me. And it was so interesting because that's all I talked about. In high school and middle school, I remember sitting at my mother's desk with a pen and paper and just writing numbers because I loved everything numbers. That was what I always wanted to be. And I got there and I was like, I don't think I like this. And I got into marketing and graduated with a degree in marketing and loved it. And right now I'm getting my master's in psychology because I pivoted again and realized that I absolutely am intrigued by the science of psychology and how the human brain works, that I'm back doing this again in something totally different. So again, I think it was really about, we talked about, understanding who you are when you're thinking about pivoting. And I'll go so far to say that, when you don't recognize who you are, then you're not pivoting, you're only changing. Right? But when you pivot, it is deliberate. And that comes with understanding who you are at your core and what it is that you want to accomplish.
I love that. I see in the comments somebody saying that you're updating your quote book. So I love that. If you don't know yourself, then you're just changing, not pivoting. Right? Add that to the list. Thank you, Cynthia. Derek, you were eager to comment on this.
I see Courtney's been on off mute for a bit. So
Oh,
I'll let
Courtney's off mute. Okay, all right.
Derek,
Get your
Derek,
pens
go ahead.
ready.
Jump in, man. I think we've all had that moment. So I'm here to listen and learn just as much. Please.
Yeah, I think the way I would frame this is, I played around a few different times. I was like, oh, am I going to be a teacher? Am I going to go this track? Am I going to go that one? It matters and it doesn't. It matters to the degree you allow it to matter. And I say that because it may actually put you on a trajectory if you want to switch academically. It may put you on some type of new trajectory. And it may just be a signal virtuing to yourself, like actually just a decision that allows for you to have peace and happiness. And it may not actually, in the end, change your career trajectory at all. And so I think what I offer here is just, to get in touch with what's actually going to bring you the joy and know that the rest is going to flow and stem from that. It will work itself out. And Cynthia, like, so many props to you for going back and getting your psychology degree now. And I think it's a testament to, like, we can do this for as long as we want to. There are no rules to abide by. And I think the last thing I'll mention is that we have to allow space for ourselves to grieve what we thought it was maybe going to be. I maybe thought I was going to be a high school ag teacher and realized I was not going to be. And there's a sadness in that. And it was okay to recognize that, to be with it, and to grieve it, and to also celebrate what is next and what you are going to do.
I love the role of grief that happens with pivots. Yeah, and how that can open up so that you're ready for what is. Courtney.
I think I'm probably about to join the choir of what the other colleagues have said. But look, I think back, if you were to read my high school yearbook senior year, it is very clear, and this haunts me to this day almost a bit. It says Courtney is going to be a medical doctor. They were doing an interview with me. Everything I had done was I was going to medical school. I knew I wanted to devote my life to the care of people. But at that time, I thought there was really only a few ways to do that, just based on the environment that I was in. So I got to college expecting that I was going to, continue that path. And like Cynthia in one of the courses she mentioned, I took a few and I was like, this just ain't it. But the reality is, switching majors also felt like failure. And, I was trying to figure out, what was I going through? Is this just a moment? Do I need to push through it, like said earlier? And by gosh, if you knew my parents, talking to them and telling them that I was about to change path, I mean, I'll just say, sheesh, I wasn't looking forward to it. And not just them, but what about all the people who had read the yearbook? What about everybody who knew the path that Courtney said he was going to be on? And I thought that I would look like somebody who just didn't know their path. And then I realized that I was choosing alignment over approval.
Mm.
And so I made the change. And that shift unlocked what I believe is my real purpose, and that I am caring for people, that I did learn a different way to do it. But the learning is also that letting go of plan A is hard, especially after you've invested years, degrees, or even identity into what was happening. But the other thing I have to give myself, and I think everyone has to do, is give yourself grace and realize that I wasn't abandoning a dream. I was honoring my evolution. The more I learned, the more I grew. That's what allowed me to be strong in the pivot. And I did something, maybe somebody else out there has done it or would think about it, but I wrote a thank you letter to my former path.
Mm.
Because gratitude is good for the soul. The very way you opened this, Erica, gratitude is good for the soul. And when we operate in gratitude, it also makes space for growth and to know that it's okay to make these changes in our lives. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, Dr. White, I feel like I've gotten some medicine for my soul today. So you are indeed caring for people. There was a question that said, can you share a moment when a no or rejection led to something even better? And I'm going to lead this off while I let the panelists think about it. So I've been sharing little pieces, little breadcrumbs of my story. And so here I was, I'd moved back home, have an infant, and I'm trying to, like I said, navigate my career and pay my bills and take care of my daughter. What I did was I came back home to my roots and to my family. So that was in alignment of my purpose. So I applied for this job at a local college at the foundation, and it's to be a grants manager. And I'm like, I've been fundraising for multiple universities. I've worked for multiple national organizations. I've got this. My cover letter is strong, my resume is solid. I go to the interview and I feel good and confident. And I get a call from the executive director of the foundation, and I'm so sure he's going to offer me that job. Instead, he calls and he says, I can't offer you this job. And I was like, what do you mean you can't? Like, oh, no, you really can. And he said, no, I can't. You're overqualified. And I was like, but I want to learn and I believe in the mission. He's like, I know, but it wouldn't be of service to you. I was a single mom trying to feed my baby and keep a roof over and take it and have a job in my career path. But he said no, and it hurt. But it kept me moving forward, pursuing the opportunities that were in alignment with not only who I am and my gifts, but where my career trajectory was. I'm now on that foundation board. Next week, I become the vice president of that foundation. And looking back, that no was, I wasn't meant to be on that foundation, but to serve on the board, provide leadership, and step into the visionary of it. And I'm so grateful for that insight of it, you know. The other is that when I became CEO, first I became interim CEO. I was sitting at a stoplight looking at my phone. Yes, I was. Don't do it. And I see a ping come through. And our CEO at the time resigned by email. I was less than a mile away from our headquarters. And so I walked through the door first as an interim CEO, simply because our captain had abandoned ship. And I had a staff that I needed to lead. I had a board that was just lost and in kind of crisis, and a vital organization to serve the most vulnerable in our community. And so what turned out to be opening up a really important door and a huge stride in my career and my service to my community resulted from an unexpected, unplanned, just thrown in my lap type of situation. And I can't help but think that the single thing that helped me prepare to lead this major agency in this part of California was that unexpected moment that I became a mom. And so how we lean into moments and build on to the next one. What are some no's that became your biggest yeses? Cynthia.
A no that became my biggest yes was a role that I've been in that area all my life and had gotten to a place where I just wanted to do something different. And I applied for a job in Georgia, and it was a senior director role, and I was super excited about it. And I didn't really tell anyone about it, but really wanted this role. And this no actually did not come from the hiring manager or the job. It actually came from a higher power, because they offered me the job.
Mm.
And there was something on my inside that said, no, it's not for you. Don't take it. And I remember thinking, what? Like, this is what I've been wanting. This is what I asked for. Come on. I know this is what I'm supposed to. Okay, fine. If I'm not supposed to take this job, then they're not going to offer me the job. Yeah, 2 days later, they offered me the job. So I'm sitting here like, this is my dream, what I thought to be my dream job. But in my heart, in my soul, I knew I couldn't take this job. But I didn't know why, right? I didn't know why. I didn't understand it. But I had no peace and no rest, and I did not take that job. And I was then offered another role that kind of catapulted me to where I am today. So whereas that no did not come from a hiring manager, it was still a no that I did not agree with and could not understand and did not understand, but knew that I needed to listen.
I love that listening,
Mm-hmm.
right, to self. The other interesting, there's this other voice that happens in us, and we have a couple questions related to this, and that is this feeling, the imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really powerful when you listen to yourself, but then there's also that little voice that likes to hang out and say, And maybe we feel that when we enter into new places, new spaces that often pivots take us into. So Derek or Courtney, can you speak to how you deal with those moments of imposter syndrome? And maybe this is for Derek, because Courtney already told us he was like doing keynotes, as a youngin' in the boardroom. But I'm sure even he has had those like, I'm a fish out of water. So how do you deal with that imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, it still comes often in my life. It's not something that I've banished away and made completely disappear. I think there's one main thing that I'll share, but there's so many different ways to look at it. But I think the main way that I deal with imposter syndrome is having an excellent support community. knowing, for me, I have had my own coach for a long time, but I also know the people within my professional network and within my life, my partner, that I can go to when I'm really just feeling like I don't belong or I am not good enough, to be celebrated and to have a bit of a reality check that not only am I good enough, but I am the person for it right now. And so I think it's really not being afraid to ask for that support. And I think something that humans are um, innately not great at is asking to be acknowledged and celebrated for how great we are at the things that we excel at. And so it's been a lot of learning how to ask for the support and asking how to excel. And then I think the second piece to all of this is to lean in, um, to get really, really curious. Okay, like I don't feel like I am right for this, or I am the person that should be doing this, and just not feeling like I have the skills that I need. Like, what is it that has me believe that? And just really get curious in a way that allows for me to get deeper and understand the beliefs that I've created about myself. And the more I lean into that, the more I can go, oh, well, one of my beliefs is that I'm never going to be good enough. And so in almost everything I do, I did better than the year before, and then better than the year before, and then better than the year before, but I've still decided it's not good enough. Well, probably a Derek thing, not probably a factual thing in the world. And so the more that I identify those things and lean in, and even I think, Courtney, you mentioned it, like writing it down and starting to see the patterns over and over again, the more you get to see that this is an external thing. It is not a thing that is embodied in you. It is a thing that is outside of you. And when you name it, it's a whole different thing to be with than believing it is a true aspect of who you are as a person.
Hmm. I uh, I want to throw out a strategy for all the time. Being new, being the new one or a new situation, on one hand, you can feel that imposter syndrome and feel the nerves or those butterflies that sometimes are hard to tame. But I want to offer a strategy that say, use that. Like there is power in saying, I'm new to studying psychology. I'm new to manners. I'm new to this job. I'm new to this sector. Will you teach me? And there's something about new that you can actually like leverage to reach out to the people that are known, that are in that area, and ask, can I have an informational interview? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I jump on a call with you? I'd love to know your journey. Take the questions you've heard from today's seminar and have your own little seminar with somebody, because people are flattered and welcome the opportunity to teach, to advise, to talk about themselves. So I want to offer that those moments that you feel about it as an imposter, ask yourself, who do I want to know about, and how can I use this moment to ask and to learn and connect with new people? So kind of reframe it. Courtney.
Listen, you all have said it perfectly, right? I mean, I think there's a vulnerability that comes with imposter syndrome that really starts to speak to potential insecurities that we all feel at some point in time. But what we have to, remember is that growth always feels awkward at first, right? I mean, as a child, I remember going through growth spurts, and then I put on something that seemed like it fit yesterday that no longer fit. And so what that meant was, we had to go out and buy new clothes. And it's always an opportunity, though, in order to, shift what makes sense. And so in these moments, I think the reflection is our greatest assets are still self-awareness, situational awareness, perspective, and mindset. I mean, like even in the terms of, imposter syndrome, what's happening. I mean, honestly, like if it's for a job or being selected for a team or something of that nature, you're not underqualified because you got the opportunity. What it is you're under familiar. And that's a difference between being underqualified and being underfamiliar. And so, as you said, you have to give yourself time to grow into the rooms and the opportunities that we earn. And that to me is the key. It's okay, as you said, not to know everything immediately. And this goes back to just giving yourself a bit of grace. Thanks.
So so growth is awkward and you're not underqualified, right? You
That's
got the
right.
job, you got the opportunity, you're under familiar. So give your spouse time and grace to become familiar and grow into those rooms. I love that. There's a question up here for that a poll that the participants answered. It said, what has made pivoting most difficult for you? 11% responded, said the fear of failure, but 33% said the uncertainty about what's next. Cynthia, you found yourself 21 months ago with uncertainty about what's next. Since at least a third of our participants find themselves not sure, most concerned about how to pivot because of the uncertainty of what's next. Thoughts, advice, guidance for our audience?
I think I've talked a lot. I think we all have. And one of the things you'll hear from me more often than not is the importance of recognizing who you are. It's funny that we talked about imposter syndrome because I personally believe that we all live it at some point in our lives, right? And the truth of the matter is that, a very high percentage of us live our lives that way, right? Because we don't take the time or utilize the opportunity to do the work in recognizing who you are. It does not just happen, right? And there is, when you're thinking about uncertainty and when you're faced with uncertainty, you have no idea what to do, where to go, and you have to start somewhere. My proposal is that you start within, right? You start within yourself. When you don't know where else to go, you don't know what to do next, start with looking inwardly at yourself. And I believe that when you recognize who you are, and that when you're actually able to tap into your authentic self, you unleash a power that absolutely cannot be stopped.
When you tap into your authentic self, you unleash
A power.
this powerful self that you can't stop.
Absolutely.
Cynthia,
National
Cynthia,
MANRRS. Oh, go ahead, Courtney.
no, I'm sorry. Cynthia hit something for me too there when she was talking, Erica. But listen, I think what we all have to also think about: are we really called to be comfortable, or are we called to be impactful? And there is a big difference because honestly, it was in my comfort that I realized that while comfort is familiar, it's not always faithful. And it can restrain me from the growth and opportunity just as much as maybe help me lean into it. But you do have to know the difference. And at the end of the day, I think that comfort, discomfort, etc., it's a muscle, just like any other muscle, and we got to exercise it all the time. And so sometimes, maybe the thing to do is just to start small and say yes to something that scares you, and no to something that drains you, and so that when the big things come, that muscle is ready to move, and breathes you just a little bit more ease than perhaps it would if you didn't. Every time I go back to the gym, I have to rework these muscles, so I know what the deal is anyway.
I love that. In the chat, our National MANRRS team asked the audience, if they were comfortable to share, if people would share about ways that they've pivoted in their life. And I want to acknowledge Capricia Williams for sharing her story of changing from an animal science major to exploring food insecurity, finding herself with the Peace Corps, and now headed to grad school in food policy. What? Yeah. I knew the panel would be excited about that. Congratulations. Keep going. Um, and then Chris, I had to pivot from agronomy to plant pathology, and was at first insecure and scared, but took a risk and shared insights from their mom, who always says, if you feel too comfortable, you're not growing. That's why I constantly push myself to try new things and embrace new challenges. Moms know, listen, right? Listen. And you know what? Actually, we know too, right? We know. But moms they'll tell us about it. For the panel, what question have I not asked that I should? What have I not asked you?
This is Courtney, maybe something that kind of goes, I think, to the theme of a lot of what's happened to in this discussion. As you've said it, Erica, there's so many commonalities. But one of the things that really shifted in my pivots also is how I define success.
Mm.
Success for me at one point in time, honestly, it was about proving I belong. Back to that imposter syndrome. I just felt this need to be on so much that I prove that I belong. But honestly, now it's about making sure that I build spaces where others don't have to prove that. Because if we can get to the point where honestly we can relieve ourselves of that weight, honestly, how much more can we invest that time, effort, and energy into doing? Success honestly is not just what you achieve, it's honestly about what you make possible for others. And so that's been one material shift in my life that has continued to return to me over and over again. Thanks.
Mm. I love that. I feel like that's the spirit of what it is to be a part of MANRRS, right? You come, you walk through that door, you feel at home, you become your best self, you try out new things, you get encouraged. But reaching up and reaching forward is great. But man, you can't forget to reach beside you and behind you. Right? You can't be at MANRRS and just strive if other people aren't coming with you. Derek, what have I not asked you that I should?
I think the one thing that's just coming up to me is we've all really talked about, pivoting our career in our lives, et cetera. And I think that I don't know what the question would be, but it kind of like how does this actually what other things does this relate to, or how else does it play out in our lives? And I think one of the things is that the more we get comfortable with pivoting, um, when we are in work situations and scenarios, what we actually learn to do is to release the drama. We really get to start being comfortable knowing that, the plan that was set out 2 weeks ago and we all agreed to on the meeting, something can zoom right in and change the course of that. And it's our job, and as we develop our leadership skills, to be with that and to not have it be this massive thing. And so the more we can really learn that pivot is a really natural thing and something that's going to be happening both in our life but in our day-to-day jobs, I think we get to be a lot more effective, because that is where we actually then get to hold the space to create the impact. When we're not, spinning our wheels deeply about how it makes us feel and the impact on our day or our week, and we can actually just shift to being in the pivot and doing the work, the more we are able to actually produce the impact for our customers, our clients, our people, our constituents, whatever it might be. And I don't mean for that to seem clinical, because we should really feel our feelings around it. But the more we lean into this work, the more we can be with our feelings and in action at the same time.
Hmm. I love that. That rings true in the workplace. I can tell you, it's been important as an employee, but now sitting in the seat of CEO, realizing that we're regularly pivoting, and what really makes a strong team member is someone doing that too. For those of you that have watched the news the last few days, I'm sorry, and but the ICE raids have been happening right in our backyard. And we do food distribution, which brings together clients and volunteers of our most vulnerable, many that are undocumented or perceived undocumented, and a third of what would normally show up for a food distribution didn't show up. So people that need the food but are in fear and have all this surplus of food. And so the team, somebody just saying, I got to do this because this is the plan and this is how we do things, keeps us from our mission of serving those that need it, right? And so we had to rethink quickly, and people go, okay, how can I carry out our mission? How can I get food safely to those that need it? Because our typical model of people coming to us doesn't serve anyone in this moment of fear, right? And so that's just like a real moment, and giving space for how it feels to be this close to what's happening in our backyard, and how it doesn't just happen in that one moment, but how it lives with us indefinitely.
Yeah, just real quickly, because I know we're getting to time, is I would also like, one of the things that I really think through in that, and I use this with a lot of my clients, is how can we continually be grounded in what our commitment is and make decisions through the lens of what our commitment is, not through the lens of how we're feeling in the moment.
Cynthia, I know you've got some wisdom that we want the audience to have before our time is up.
Is this on the question that you didn't ask?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I would say, what do you do when your pivot fails? Right? You pivot and you didn't get the expectation that you thought you would get. And I would say to that is just modify the adjustments. Right? I bought a new clock, and I thought it was pretty cool, something totally different. And I could not get that daggone thing to work to save my life. And I could not figure, I was following everything that the instructions said for me to do, but there was a glitch in it. So I simply found the reset button, reset the entire clock, and started over, and it began to work. So if you make a pivot and you do not get the expected results, it's not failure. Take a moment, readjust, and modify, and you'll make it.
And Cynthia, you're living proof of that.
I'm living proof.
Right? Look at this.
You can do this thing.
20 months later, fabulous, carrying a legacy. And I can't help but think that your husband is watching from above, is here with each of us and going like, dang, she knows what she's talking about. Listen to her, right?
Absolutely.
We're going to test my technology skills here as I share the screen with some announcements. I want to once again just it's been so great to hear each of your stories, and thank you for sharing so vulnerably, so openly, so candidly. I'm glad the audience can add, just like I can, to all my quotes and wisdom to guide me through the next opportunity, change, pivot in our life. I'm hoping people can see my screen. to take the survey and give some feedback. The National MANRRS team is eager to continue to build the MANRRS Include Summer Series so that they're impactful and for exactly what you need in your life. So if you could complete the survey. The next session is August 12th at 12 p.m. Eastern, or if you're with me in California, 9 a.m. Here is the QR code to register. What is your legacy? Such an important question to ask ourselves and to dialogue on. So mark your calendars, August 12th. Don't forget about the regional clusters. Being with one another is exciting and is some of my favorite memories of being with MANRRS, being together, not just at that National MANRRS Conference, but those clusters, connecting and learning and growing. So make sure that you take a look at that. If there's some professionals on the call, don't forget you can have an exhibit, or better yet, sponsor or contribute. There's so many opportunities that exist when you're part of the MANRRS at any stage of your journey, and keep the conversation going. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for the audience for joining. I hope that as you've listened to everybody's story, that you've taken time to listen to your own, and we carry us with you. We're rooting for you. Thank you so much to the MANRRS family. It's great to be with all of you.